The number one skill to be a good negotiator is
Negotiation isn't about being loud, it's about being smart.
people tend to believe the louder we are, the more we get done, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
Lousin Mehrabi has worked with hostage negotiators, CEOs, and the world's top deal makers.
The best negotiators I've worked with, all of them, without exception, are introverts.
And she knows exactly how to get what you want.
The word you've used several times is a word that I absolutely hate, which is compromise.
Want to win every negotiation? Press play.
Negotiation is problem solving, is how to go from a disagreement to an agreement.
If someone was to say, who do you think is a great negotiator, whether or not it's true, I think people would say Donald Trump.
I personally believe Donald Trump is a good negotiator because he gets things done, but I don't think he's a good negotiator in every circumstance.
The fear of rejection must factor into people's ability or inability to be good negotiators.
Negotiation, leadership, and emotional intelligence always go hand in hand. It's the exact same skills that we need to be a good leader as that we need to be a good negotiator.
Even if they're dealing with a more powerful country, they could find things to do that are still detrimental to both sides.
If the entire world was better at negotiation, we would have so much less suffering.
When you say suicide, you mean you're trying to stop somebody from killing themselves?
Right. With suicide negotiations, it's there and then, and you don't know how long you have. You don't know if the person is going to talk to you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. So therefore, literally every single word counts.
Guys, Matt Haycock's here, and I'm very excited to have in the house today Lousin Mehrabi, the international negotiating expert. She's a keynote speaker. She's worked with hostage negotiators, she's worked with businesses, I'm sure she's negotiated in her own personal life as well. She was introduced to me through a great friend of mine who speaks very highly of her. I've been listening to some of her work before today, and as someone who's got his own views on negotiation, I'm looking forward to asking you about that, listening to your stories, and I think it's going to be a good episode for all of our listeners, because I think a good place to start from this is that everybody is in sales. Everybody is negotiating all day, every day, whether or not they know it. And I can say that from personal experience, having just come here, having shared breakfast with my 19-month-old baby, who doesn't have many words in her vocabulary, but all of them seem to be some kind of negotiating tactic. And it tends to revolve around how close can she get to the fridge and how much chocolate can she take out of it. But jokes aside, that is a negotiation. I would argue that kids are some of the best negotiators in the world, because they will scream and scream and scream and make your life a misery until you give in. And then for some reason, we seem to lose that negotiating gene the older we get. But Lousin, thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is going to be very interesting.
I tell you, actually, I said we start off talking about kids and other people's negotiation. But one thing, I guess, that immediately hit me, first of all, when I met you and also listening to some of your content, is I think people naturally expect negotiators, A, to be male, and B, to be aggressive. And I'll go more with the aggressive bit than the male bit, but I think negotiating as a tactic, as a skill, is thought of as really aggressive people. Yeah. And I think if someone was to say, who do you think is a great negotiator, whether or not it's true, I think people would say Donald Trump, or I go blank, but someone like him who blusters his way into a situation, steamrollers people out of the way to get what they want. Yeah. But I guess that can't be true. Sat here looking at you. You're very mild-mannered. You're very polite. I guess tell me how you see it from your perspective.
Well, unfortunately, you're right. Unfortunately, there is this negative thing about negotiation, that it's about manipulation and about being aggressive and about being loud, which I believe is created by the movies, created by media, created by everything we see on Wall Street. I mean, I'm from finance myself, and I worked on the trading floors. So people tend to believe the louder we are, the more we get done. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Another mistake, people often believe that negotiation is for extroverts, people who are extremely outgoing and loud and want to be in large crowds. But the people I work with and what I see on the field is that the best negotiators I've worked with, all of them, without exception, are introverts, are calm, are composed. I always say the number one skill to be a good negotiator is self-control. It's remaining calm in stressful situations, because high stakes negotiations are stressful. So it's not about being the loudest, it's not about being aggressive, it's not about manipulating, lying, and getting your way that way. That is a tactic and can be used in certain situations and can be beneficial. But the majority of the cases we can resolve by remaining calm, so that we can stay connected to our frontal lobe, the part of the brain that is making the decisions, that is reflecting, that can analyze the situation from different angles, and that can come to a solution. Because what negotiation basically is a way to get your needs met. That's why we negotiate. It's a way to resolve conflicts. That's why we negotiate. And as you rightfully said, our children, they know exactly how to do it because they want their needs met, and they're not reflecting on strategies, etc. They're just focused on their needs. I have a need, I want to get it met, so that's why I do what I do. And it literally starts from the second they are born, crying for milk, crying for attention, crying for affection. Like, we are born negotiators. We already know. It's just that the tactics we used when we were babies are not necessarily adapted anymore.
But I think what I've picked up, or something I'm picking up from what you're saying, though, is to negotiate. Two people have to want to negotiate. Two people have to want to achieve something. I say two people, two sides. It could be two people in business. It could be a husband and wife arguing. It could be countries. It could be businesses. Yep. When we use the child analogy, to me that's not two people who want to negotiate to a compromise. That's one person who is going to get what they want at all costs, and one person who is going to see how long that they can argue and ultimately back down. And I say that in jest, but it's true, isn't it? At the end of the day, I'm stood in front of the fridge this morning with my daughter. She wants chocolate. She will scream until she gets a chocolate, and I either give her it and lose, or I have to pick her up and move her into the other room and distract her with Netflix, and see if her attention span moves on to that instead. I mean, are there any takeaways we can learn from that or can use from that in, let's say, more sophisticated, high-stakes compromises, as opposed to, although, I don't know, I mean, I'm trying to think of an analogy to that. Maybe in international global negotiations, if you've got a psychotic dictator who doesn't want to negotiate, and a sensible country who does, but then I guess if someone doesn't want to negotiate, then that's when the nuclear weapons come out, right? Absolutely.
We need to be aware of who is part of the negotiation table. It's always at least two parties involved, sometimes several. And is there a willingness to come to an agreement? Often I'm called into a situation, it's already high stakes, they haven't been able to resolve the conflict, and I come in and the person they want me to negotiate with, that person doesn't want to talk to me. They're like, who the fuck are you? Why should I talk to you? Why are you coming in? So it already starts with me having to negotiate the negotiation, meaning make it understood that it's better for them if they come to the table.
And how do you do that? Because again, as I'm talking, I'm thinking of circumstances or analogies, and if someone listening to this isn't in business, and we're talking about, let's say, their teenage kid's super naughty, and they're saying, listen, I want to talk to you, and I want to educate you, negotiate with you about what acceptable behaviour is. And they're like, no, Mom, fuck you, I'm not getting involved in this. They don't want to negotiate, but you have to bring them to the table. So you cut off their allowance, you lock them in the bedroom, and you say, listen, you're going to be eating no food, you're going to be spending no money until you want to come to the table. And I guess if it's a country, if the dictator doesn't want to negotiate, then you've got to start killing a few of the people close to him until he realises that maybe compromise is the best solution, and then the negotiation opens.
Two things I want to say. So you already said intuitively you've already been doing it, because one of the tactics to get somebody who doesn't want to negotiate to the negotiation table is to make their situation while not negotiating worse. So you increase the pain of not negotiating. Okay, there are obviously different tactics to be done, whether that's in business or high-stakes negotiations. And the second thing, the word you've used several times is a word that I absolutely hate, which is compromise.
Okay.
We tend to believe...
We'll fix that in the edit.
No, I'm happy you mentioned it, because obviously all the listeners are also thinking that compromise is a part of negotiation, that somewhere, somehow we have to compromise. And I always get this in my trainings as well. And my question back is, who here likes to compromise?
But no, nobody likes to compromise, but there has to be compromise.
Not necessarily. For me, a good negotiation is having the skills to truly understand what matters to the other party. So you don't stop with what they say they want. That is just a position. It doesn't matter whether they tell you that, verbally, or they write it to you in an email. Whatever they tell you that they want, that is just a position. And people start negotiating on that. And I always say, no. Take a step back, analyze, do your homework, and try to understand with good questions and everything that goes with it, what is truly at stake here? What is it that they need? Because I can tell you, after having negotiated high-stakes deals for over 2 decades, Matt, it's incredible, but over 90% of the cases, and I'm even confident to say 99% of the cases, what people say they want is not what they need.
Let me hit you with a mad stat. You are probably not subscribed. Seriously, 58% of the people who listen to this podcast every single week do not hit that subscribe button. That is more than half of you. So let's fix this right now. The goal here is super simple. We grow the podcast, we bring in bigger guests, and we give you even more no bullshit, actionable insights to level up your business and to level up.
But if I were to give, let's say, maybe a simple but semi-extreme scenario, somebody's selling a property for $1 million, and I'd like to pay $100,000 to buy it. Right. I mean, we're so far apart, it's so extreme. There has to, look, if I get it for $500,000, it's probably still a bargain, right? But I'm still compromising from the 100,000, but I was just so unrealistic when I set out in the first place.
Right, but that person is probably, if the value of the property is really around $1 million, they're never going to give you it for 500K, even if you're the best negotiator in the world. Because that's where the needs come in. It's not only about the skills, it's truly understanding their needs.
So let me maybe go on a slight tangent, but I'll ask you something like, because this was one of the angles I wanted to talk about. So people tell me that I'm a great negotiator.
Okay.
Because I could give you many examples of, let's say, deals I've done where I look like I've come out extremely well, typically buying an asset for a very cheap price. Now I say, I don't think I am a good negotiator. I say, maybe I understand some of life skills, and I think maybe I'm good at building relationships and being polite and not being aggressive. But where I believe I win in my negotiations is a lot of prep work and a lot of pipeline building. Because ultimately, I don't believe you can get someone to do something that they fundamentally don't want to do or can't do.
I agree.
So what I do is find lots and lots and lots of people to talk to, because I work from the perspective that you catch the right person on the right day, you'll get what you want. And one of my well-documented stories, because I talk about it a lot and I've made YouTube videos on it, is the apartment that I live here in Dubai. I bought this place off an asking price of 20 million dirhams, and I paid 7.1 million dirhams to buy it. And if I ever bump into realtors and we talk about this story, they always tell me they don't believe me. I say, go and look on DLD. I'm not lying to you. It's public record. They say it's impossible. And I say, my view is, it probably is impossible in isolation. But what happened in that scenario was I decided I was going to buy a place. I went and spoke to 4 or 5 realtors. I got 30 or 40 different properties that I wanted to buy. That I was happy to buy. And I made ridiculous offers on every one of them. Now, maybe everybody tells me to piss off and we don't get anywhere. But again, experience tells me that somebody always has special circumstances, and a conversation could open. And it happened, and on this particular apartment of mine, the agent was ringing me every day, do you want to make an offer? Do you want to make an offer? And I wasn't trying to play games with him, but I was saying to him, listen, I don't understand Dubai enough yet. Let me understand more areas, right. and then I'll come and talk to you if I want it. But the guy wouldn't stop ringing me, and I said, okay, I'll make an offer. And he said, brilliant. What are you going to offer? This was off 20 million, and I said, I'll offer you 6. And he's like looking at me laughing at me like I'm an idiot. He goes, well, he's never going to accept that. I said, I'm sure he's not. I said, but you're going to stop ringing me, aren't you? So, and he comes back the next day. He goes, I can't believe it. He's come down. I said, oh, really? What's it? He goes, 18 million. He goes, do you want a counter? I said, sure, I'll counter, yeah. He's like, what are you thinking? 16 and a half, 7? I said, 6.1.
Oh, my God.
And this happened for probably a period of 6 weeks or 8 weeks where he'd go 20 to 18, I'd go 6 to 6.1, he'd go 18 to 17, I'd go 6.1 to 6.2. And I think ultimately we met around, I was at 7.2, I think, and he was at 7.7.
Incredible.
And the guy goes, 7.7 is his bottom line. I said, listen, anyone who goes from 20 to 7.7, they've got another few $100,000 in them. Come back to me when you've got him at 7.2. And I got it. Now, when I look at that, when people hear that story, they're like, oh, God, I want to hire Matt for everything. But I didn't do anything particularly clever other than what I think was put the work in at the beginning to find people. I bought my boat. I bought it on very much the same basis. I knew the boat that I wanted to buy. I found 20 people who were looking to sell. I offer everybody half price. 3 or 4 people start talking to me. The complete flip side of that is my ex-wife, where she'd want to buy a horse for her, a horse for our daughter, and she'd ring me up. She'd go, I found this horse. It's a beautiful horse. They're asking $10,000. I've told them that we're having it and we'll collect it tomorrow, but can you go and negotiate the price, please? I'm like, are you fucking crazy? Like, the price of that would be $15,000 because they know you love it and they know you're collecting it tomorrow. Right. And so I've kind of set the scene with a couple of long stories there, but ultimately. I don't think you can make someone do something they don't want to do. For me, one of my best negotiating tactics is genuinely not caring. And when I say I'm not clever at negotiation, what I mean is there's some very talented people out there who care a lot but can pretend not to care and can really do all the psychological warfare. I don't really think I can. If I want something, I probably want it. But I just think I can build good relationships with people so we can talk to each other honestly. I can be creative if I need to be creative. I can be very honest. But then I just have enough options so that if things don't go my way, then I'm not going to be crying about it.
Well, great. So let's analyze it. Let's analyze why you are a good negotiator. So hearing it from me, maybe that will change your perspective. You are a good negotiator. It's not only what the others are saying. And let's analyze exactly everything you said and to see why you succeeded and why your ex-wife didn't, and the success stories and what we can learn from it for the audience. So number one, you said you're doing your preparations. So you're doing your homework, you know what you're talking about, you know the market, and this is extremely important. You would be surprised how many people I see on a negotiation table that have no idea what they're talking about. Like, that already ruins immediately your credibility and everything else you have to say in that period. So doing your homework is extremely important. In certain circumstances, we even say it's 80% of the work. Prepare, do your homework, know who you're talking to, know the market, know the product, know everything you can, because that is all leverage in your favor. Then the second thing you do very well, you said, is building relationships, like building a bond. This is also extremely important, and people who do it naturally think that it's something easy, but it's not. There are a lot of people who have difficulties connecting with other people, bonding with other people, establishing a relationship of trust. This comes very naturally to certain people and is very difficult for some. So this is something you cannot not do. Even in high-stakes negotiations, when we're talking about hostage negotiations, kidnap and ransom, negotiating with dogmatic people who are, for example, psychotic or have taken drugs or anything, and they are ready to do horrible things, and you're like, I hate that person, I never want to deal with them, you still have to. And it starts with building a bond. It starts with making them believe that they can trust you in whatever it is that you say you'll do. And when I talk about trust, it's not necessarily trusting you with them live and say, you know what, I trust this person, etc. It's just trusting that in the negotiation they will do what they say they'll do. So that's the second thing.
I was going to say, sorry to interrupt on that, but I think for me as well, particularly in business, that is so important because, again,
crucial.
A lot of the deals that I do with people, they're quite creative deals. Mm-hmm. They involve maybe getting extended payment terms, maybe swapping things or doing really weird and wonderful things. And people go, how did that guy possibly agree to what you agreed? I think the only reason he agreed is because he trusts me. And I guess if someone's asking to be paid today and I'm saying, well, I'll pay you over the next 12 months, he's not going to do that for anybody else, but he's going to do it for me because, best case scenario, he knows I'm going to deliver because we've got that trust. Worst case scenario, if I don't deliver, he knows I'm going to have tried my hardest because he likes me, etc. So, and I guess you could apply that to so many things. If it's international warfare or whatever,
everything.
If
even the reason I'm sitting here, as you said, our mutual friend introduced me to you and said she was on my podcast, was one of the best episodes, you should have her on. And you said, okay, let's plan it. You didn't even know who I was, you didn't read about me, nothing. But just because this person that you trust told you that you should have me on, boom, you did it. So relationships are so, so important. And I think in the world of where AI is emerging, relationships are going to become more and more and more important, because how do you want to build trust with AI or on AI? It's this human factor that is crucial. So that's the second thing you did, and you do very well. The third thing you already mentioned is being creative. Like, negotiation is problem solving, is how to go from a disagreement to an agreement. There are many people who tell me, Luz, I hate negotiation because I hate conflict. And I always say we negotiate to resolve conflict. It's because we don't like conflict that we have to become better at negotiation. If the entire world was better at negotiation, Matt, we would have so much less suffering. There would be less wars, divorces would be more smooth, like everything would be resolved better and faster if people knew how to negotiate better. Sometimes as a joke, when people tell me, what do you do? Just to get their reaction, because I've had millions of reactions when I say I'm a negotiator, but just to get another reaction, I say I'm a mediator, I resolve conflict. They're like, oh, interesting, tell me more. A mediator and negotiator do exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. The only difference is, as a negotiator, we represent one party, as a mediator, in between. But the goal is the same: resolve conflict, come to an agreement. So being creative is super important. To know, okay, we have a problem at stake, how can we resolve this? And then creativity. You know how many situations I've resolved with, as you said, like things that are completely not done or not thought about or different than what they expected. But that creative hat is very important in resolving conflict. So that's the third thing you said. The fourth thing is also crucial, and this is what people underestimate, is your capacity to remain detached. And that's very important, right? Many people go into a negotiation and they know exactly what they want, what they don't want, what's their walkaway point, and this is how it should be. But the goal is to go into a negotiation with an enormous mindset of curiosity, of saying, I want to discover if reaching a deal is in my best interest, because maybe it's not. So very open-minded and saying, I want to discover if this is the best or not. And the more you've done your homework, the more you know there are other options out there, so it's not this or nothing. So you're already coming in more calm, more confident, more relaxed, and that can help you. So you being detached from the outcome of saying, you know what, I've viewed 20 houses, I can view 30 more, and we'll see. It's not this house or nothing. It's not my dream house, like the dream horse that your ex-wife wanted, right? Because then you're already putting yourself in a scenario of saying, oh my God, I need to have this, I need to have this. So your need increases, and therefore your willingness to compromise or give more than what you wanted. So that's the fourth element. And the fifth element, what I notice in the way you speak and what you say about yourself, is authenticity. Like, you're not faking it, you're not bullshitting people, you're real. Because you've done your homework, you're detached from the outcome, you know you will get what you want anyways. And therefore you don't have to fake, you don't have to lie, you don't have to manipulate, all those things that people think must be done in a negotiation, which I completely disagree with. You don't have to. If you do your homework properly and you do the work on yourself, which I'm a big advocate of, how to remain calm in stressful situations, that's how you can get a lot done with collaboration, with honesty, with authenticity. You don't have to lie, you don't have to bullshit anyone.
If you like deep dive conversations, then you are going to love my other podcast, Stripping Off with Matt Haycox, because this is where I sit down with the biggest names in business, entertainment, celebrity, media, politics and beyond to strip back the bullshit, the PR spin and the scripted success, and just get to the truth. Who's the person behind the mask? What does it really take to win? No fluff, no filters, just raw, naked truths and the unfiltered stories from those who've truly made it. So go find it wherever you listen to your podcasts, or hit the link in the show notes and get stuck in.
So when we talk about, let's say, some of the stereotypical negotiators, like a Donald Trump, potentially, or these very male, aggressive, blusterful characters, are they good negotiators? As in, do they apply the strategies and tactics that you've just been talking about, or are they just getting what they want because they're finding weak targets and steamrolling over them?
Yeah, both. I personally believe Donald Trump is a good negotiator because he gets things done, but I don't think he's a good negotiator in every circumstance. Why? Because when you analyze Donald Trump's negotiation style, it's quite similar in all of the circumstances. What he does is he often comes in and first takes off the table what was already agreed on in the past, and then makes you negotiate to get what you already had. We've seen this over and over again, for example, with the Paris Agreement or with other agreements that are already signed, that are already a done deal. He comes and it's like, okay, this is now off the table, and makes you beg for something you already had. So this is, for example, what we saw in the COVID, when people were, all of a sudden we had to wear masks or we weren't allowed to go certain places. And then when we were allowed to do that again, there were like parties happening and we were all so happy. Like, hello, you already had that right. So it's not something that you gained, but it feels that way because it was taken away from you. And this is what Donald Trump does. The second thing he does is he goes all in on authority. So it's the authority power that he uses, his name, his function, President of the United States, etc. So he goes in with the same angle, same tactics, and then he has this extreme big level of charisma and confidence and, you know, the way he shows up that make people seem impressed or intimidated even. And that's how he gets things done, by combining these three things. Now, put Donald Trump in a circumstance where he has to, he cannot use his name, he cannot use his fame, he cannot use anything. And it has to be a collaborative negotiation because what's at stake cannot be resolved competitively. I'm not sure if he would be very successful. So can he get deals done? Yes. Is he a good negotiator in certain circumstances? Yes. Is he a good negotiator overall, and can he negotiate anything with anyone at any time? No.
So I guess on a slight tangent, would you argue therefore that building personal brand, building credibility in life in general, you know, let's say popularity or fame in your niche or popularity in general, is a globally good negotiating tactic for you, because when you arrive in a situation, you already appear with a certain level of framing and certain level of authority?
Absolutely, 100%. Like the framework I always use with what I teach my clients is, in order to be a good negotiator, there's three angles we need, three pillars if you want. The first one is credibility, and this we have to work on consistently. So it's building your network, your relationships, the company you work for, the culture, all those things. It's the authority that it gives you, because authority is not something that you can proclaim. Authority is given to you by other people. How do they perceive you? And knowing the right people, having a certain audience, having a certain expertise, all those things matter and help you. Then the second pillar is your competence. Obviously, your skills. You need to be good at negotiation. But this is where a lot of negotiation books or trainings are focused only on the skills, only on the tactics, only on the techniques, like ask certain type of questions or speak with a certain voice. And that's not enough. Of course, it's crucial, and there are some hard skills that you absolutely have to know not to make mistakes, but that alone is not going to be enough. Your credibility is super important. And then the third pillar, and this is what I'm most passionate about, and I'm surprised that we don't talk about this more in the negotiation world, is composure. Again, how to remain calm in stressful situations. You don't want to know how often I have trained people, whether it's one-to-one or groups, or I'm advising them behind the scenes, and the entire team has been trained, has been prepped. We've gone through the whole negotiation strategy. Everything is ready to go. They go in and they ruin it within the first hour because ego comes up, because they don't have self-control, because they're pushed against the wall and they lose it and they forgot everything we just went through, prepping for weeks or months. So this self-composure is something that I can't teach you in 5 minutes. This is something that needs to be cultivated, that needs to be a part of you, and that you need to work on every single day through the different techniques, etc., that are out there. But we don't talk about it enough. There are so many negotiators who have the skills, who have the credibility, who have the experience, who have the expertise, and yet it becomes stressful and they go back to their default system and they become either aggressive, emotional, or whatever else that make them lose the negotiation.
When you were talking about Trump a minute ago, you were talking about one of his tactics is to take off the table what's already on it.
Right.
And then you used a COVID example that when you give it back, people think they've had a win. I mean, I would assume that's quite a double-edged sword negotiating tactic, because I know, I'm very strong the opposite way with trust, that if I don't trust you or like you, I'll just switch off unless I've got no other option. Fine, but
Right.
If I have options, you'll switch me off so much. And if you take something off the table that was already on it, I think for me that would probably be terminal to the negotiation, because I just think this person absolutely cannot be trusted. If he's going to do it now, what's going to happen further down the line?
And you said it yourself, because you have other options. In this case, what makes Trump successful is he does it with the authority that he has. So it's those things combined. It's you are dependent on him, so you're just going to follow his lead. He's leading the negotiation by doing it this way. Like, he's coming in and he immediately shuffles the cards. Like, it doesn't matter how well you were prepared, what you were thinking, whatever you thought you already had is already off the table. So he just messes with your brain as well. And that's a tactic that can work, but it can only work if you have the upper hand and if you have the authority that goes with it.
You were talking a minute ago as well about somebody making the decision whether or not it's worth them engaging in the negotiation, whether they can get a kind of a satisfactory outcome to what they wanted. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was hostage negotiations. Mm-hmm. And I guess people could be thinking about life and death negotiations as in countries arguing with each other, but I would argue that, as life and death as it may be, some of these countries probably think they do have some other options, because they can still go, even if they're dealing with a more powerful country, they could still go to war. They could, they could find things to do that are still detrimental to both sides. But I could be wrong when I say it, but I look at hostage negotiation as something a lot more polarizing or binary. If a guy has gone into a bank to hold up a bank, and let's map out a specific scenario, as extreme as it may be. He's gone into a bank to hold up a bank. He's got 20 hostages in the bank. He's got a bag with a couple of $1 million, and he's killed a hostage. Mm-hmm. He's now inside the bank. The police are around outside, and he's talking to the hostage negotiator about coming out. I mean, if I was that guy, I don't see how I can ever think of that there's any good outcome for me, because I know that my best case scenario is I'm coming out of there and I'm spending the rest of my life in prison, because I've just killed a hostage in a bank holdup. So, and being killed on the job could probably be a better outcome for me than spending the rest of my life in prison. As the negotiator, how are you dealing with that person? Because I'm there as well going, I want a helicopter waiting outside. I want a couple more $1 million in the bag, and I want a Pizza Hut while I'm waiting. I mean, it's not coming. I might get the pizza. I might even get the helicopter, but I'm never getting away. I mean, what do these people really hope to achieve?
Well, it's a very good question, and we could even ask the question the other way around: is what is the hostage negotiator even thinking to achieve?
I guess he's got 19 lives to save, and he's buying time for someone to find an angle. No.
Well, buying time is always important to give the rest of the team, because as negotiators, we never go in alone. Like, again, that is a misconception that we have from Hollywood movies, where there is like one star and he's negotiating everything. Like, that's
he's
nonsense.
Got the gun stuck with sellotape on his back.
Yeah, but it's not like that. Even in hostage negotiations, it's never like that. There's always a team. There's always the lead negotiator, and then there's the one helping, and then there's the decision maker, which is never the negotiator. And there's a whole team. So we always want to gain time so we can prepare, we can analyze the person we're negotiating with, we want to understand. But even, our listeners, and thank God they don't often have to do hostage negotiations. So I want to bring this immediately, the hostage negotiation situation, to everyday life. Because we don't realize that we're often taken hostage ourselves, be it on a business setting, be it in a family setting, and we don't realize that we're being taken hostage by somebody who's, for example, being extremely aggressive or makes demands that are completely ridiculous. So that can be compared, and yet we have some form of dependency because they have something that we want. That is a hostage taking. And I often say this in everyday life when I'm dealing with people. I say, I feel taken hostage. I don't like this scenario. They're like, what do you mean? And then I explain. They're like, yeah, okay, I didn't mean it that way. But there is a great book written by one of my mentors, George Kohlreiser. George Kohlreiser was a hostage negotiator himself and is a psychologist and is the lead trainer for IMD Business School. So he's teaching all this, and he wrote a book called Hostage at the Table, where he's bringing all these hostage negotiation skills to the business setting world. Fascinating book, recently released part 2 of it. And I was fortunate enough to work with him, where he invited me to a leadership summit in Gstaad, where we trained leaders all over the world for a week in all these skills. So negotiation was a big one. And because we both say negotiation, leadership, and emotional intelligence always go hand in hand. Like when you become a better negotiator, you automatically become a better leader, and the other way around. Because it's the exact same skills that we need to be a good leader as that we need to be a good negotiator. So to come back to your question, why do we still negotiate with these type of people? We negotiate to get intel. We negotiate to understand who else are they working with. We negotiate to prevent, as you said, either somebody else getting killed or future scenarios from happening. And all the time that we're talking to them, it's not only convincing them to stop what they're doing, it's also to gain intel about what else is at stake. Like, is at the same time one of his buddies robbing another bank? Is another team coming? Is he alone? What is the situation in the bank? Do any of the other hostages need assistance, need medical help, etc., etc.? So we keep talking, because with every good question and every minute of conversation, we gain more intel, which can help. So even if we're thinking of dealing with people that are completely unreasonable, I always say continue talking, because the intel you gain by doing it well can always serve in either that same negotiation or a future negotiation. So that's one of the reasons why we keep talking to morons.
I like that. I didn't think of the decoy bank robbery, that he's holding up some hostages to attract the attention while his friends are down the road robbing a bigger bank.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
How did you learn your skills?
My background is in finance. I was doing business negotiations, M&A, IPO, some lobbying as well. And I was fortunate enough to work for a company who invested a lot in training, corporate training. So they brought in 2 professional negotiators. This was back in 2013. One of them was from the Special Forces in France. And these 2 men, they taught us a year long everything about negotiation, lie detection, profiling. And I was just so fascinated by it that once I started applying what they taught me, I was like, oh my goodness, why didn't I know this before? And I realized that in the business field, we're often sent to negotiate without having had proper training. In business schools, it's being taught a little bit. But compared to how much time we spend in everyday life negotiating, it's peanuts, the training that we get. And there are certain things that if you don't know, you're going to make the same mistakes over and over again. So it doesn't matter whether you have 20, 30, 40 years of experience. If you don't know, you don't know. So there are some hard skills that are very beneficial to learn. And I learned that back then in 2013, because back then I'd already been negotiating for at least 15 years and doing it as I thought, like most of us. And then I had the training and I was like, oh my goodness, thank God I'm equipped. And to make a long story short, they asked me to join them as a consultant. I did several years later, and now I'm here in Dubai helping companies with their negotiations. And not only companies, I work with hospitals, I work with medical teams, I work with governments. In high-stakes negotiations, business, suicide, divorce cases, you name it.
When you say suicide, you mean you're trying to stop somebody from killing themselves?
Right.
What would that kind of a scenario be? I mean, again, looking at the movies, somebody stood on a balcony saying, I'm going to jump. I mean, who's calling you in to do the negotiation?
Well, it's not something that I want to advertise, because it's not necessarily something that I want to do very often, and I hope I don't have to. But the first time, it was the person planning to commit suicide who called me directly and saying, okay, this is what I've done. Can you please inform my wife? The second time, it was the HR department of a company I had trained. And then they had someone in the company, threatening to commit suicide. And she called me because she didn't know who else to call. And I talked to that person. So it's not something that you advertise and you say, hello, I'm a suicide negotiator. It's just when people know you're a negotiator and things like that happen, they tend to call you in.
I mean, without trying to go off on a psychological tangent about suicide, I guess one of the first things I would think if someone is calling you to say, I've just done, I've done this, or I'm going to kill myself. My first thought point, well, you don't really want to, otherwise you wouldn't have called. I mean, I guess that's always something I immediately think about suicide. That if you really wanted to do it, you would just do it. So, is that your opening to negotiate? That I guess that they haven't done it yet, they're still alive, and there is therefore still hope.
For sure. Yeah, the fact that we're talking means there's still hope. The fact that they're talking back to you means there's still hope. And that's the little tiny bit of hope that you still have to hang on to. But without taking that as a guarantee that they won't, because they can. At any second, they can still do it. So the stakes are high. We can't make mistakes. Every word counts. And that's where the whole emotional intelligence comes in. Like how fast, because you don't know how long you have. Right, when we're doing business negotiations, we know that we rarely expect a deal to be done right there and then. Like it can take weeks, months, sometimes years when we're doing very high-stakes business deals. So we know we have time. We can go home, we can think about it. With suicide negotiations, it's there and then, and you don't know how long you have. You don't know if the person is going to talk to you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. So therefore, literally every single word counts, and the self-composure, again, is extremely important. To try to understand in the short period of time that you have what matters to this person. Why are they doing this? Why are they serious about doing this? How real is this? What is it that they need? And try to, as fast as possible, understand their need and create some form of bond to make them want to talk to you, because the first thing is they don't. And then slowly open up. And again, don't ever make the mistake on any negotiation, but never assume. Never assume that you know, never assume that you booked a win, never assume anything. Stay humble until the very last second, until there's an actual real agreement, or in this case, they actually walk away with you, deciding not to do it.
I'm a big newsletter reader. Read a lot of newsletters, and I was reading one on Sunday. And it wasn't specifically about negotiation, but it was about the fear of rejection. But I guess that is something that must factor into people's ability or inability to be good negotiators. Because I guess if you fear rejection, then you're not going to ask the questions that you need to ask to be able to move the negotiation forward, because you're going to fear that rejection or that embarrassment. Right. I read something in this newsletter, and I thought, I'm going to ask you about it, because now, for context, the newsletter is written by a guy I like a lot, and he was writing about a guy who I also have a lot of time for, but I just thought, to me, this was one of the most ridiculous things I'd ever heard. And he talked about the need to effectively build up that muscle against fear of rejection. That like effectively, the more you get rejected, the more you'll be able to cope with it. And it's that heart pounding when you're about to open your mouth and ask a stupid question, or ask a question that's going to get you knocked back. Right. And the example that this guy gives as his training is he wants you to go to Starbucks or go to the coffee shop every day and walk up to the counter and ask for a 10% discount on the coffee that you're about to buy. Right. And I just thought it just sounds so utterly ridiculous. First of all, I mean, I think the rejection's guaranteed, because if you're walking into a Starbucks or something, then there is nowhere to deviate. I would think surely a much better training is to go into a car showroom and ask for a 10% discount, where where it's you're still going to get rejected probably 8 times out of 10, but there is also more chance of something coming out at the end. I thought, I'm going to ask you about that and see if I'm being unfair, or if that if that is a strategy that people can use to start to build up that rejection muscle and get better at negotiating. Yeah, I think for sure. And I use it in my trainings. Like, I've done trainings where I ask people, before you come to the training, you have to get something for free. Okay. I don't care where, I don't care when, but you have to get something for free. Or I give them 2 choices. I said, either you have to get something for free before coming to the training, or you have to find out a secret about somebody that they've never told anybody. Okay, so this is a cohort coming, and it's a big group. It's a big group of leaders. I do this with the company, that I've been working with for years, and every year they invest a lot in leadership training, and they bring their best leaders of all different countries together. So these people don't know each other, but they've all been selected by their CEO to be part of this week. And there is a video that I send out before the training. I said, guys, you're coming in, we're going to talk about negotiation, but before you come in, you have to either find out a secret about one of your cohort members,
or get something for free from wherever, from whenever.
You're promoting an HR disaster.
But you would be surprised. So there is a part of the group, and I've seen this years and years, and doing it for different companies. There's a part that comes in that hasn't done it. They're like, I'm not playing along. I'm just not doing this. Okay? So this shows something about giving up before trying, or me not having earned the credibility of them telling them what to do because they don't know me yet, or they just were too afraid. And it's the third one that I'm interested in, because then I want to understand why, like what's holding you back. And then they're like, yeah, how would you have done it? And then I explain how I do it, because I play along. I always try to get something for free in the country that I'm giving the training, or find out a secret about some of the members of the cohort. And I tell them, and they said, okay, how would you do it? I said, listen, it is super simple. I gave you this assignment to all of you. So you're all on the same boat. There's already one thing that you have in common with somebody else of your cohort they both need to get the same thing. So in this situation, the best way to do it is to say, I'll tell you a secret, you tell me a secret. Boom. You both won the assignment. And this is where I come in and say, always focus on the need. What is the need of the other party? Because if they have a need that you have as well, you can like join problems and then resolve it together. And another way is also, I always say, make your problem their problem. For example, I was traveling to that country, and I asked the steward, I said, I really love this spoon, can I keep it? And he's like, no, you can't keep the spoon. And I'm like, listen, I'm doing an assignment, I need to have something for free, I'm landing in an hour, I don't have time to go anywhere else, I need to have something for free. And then he's just looking at me, and then I'm like, so how do we do it? And he doesn't even realize that I say, how do we do it? Like, this is not his problem, this is my problem. And he goes into mode of problem solving, like, how do we do it? He thinks it's his problem, and he wants to help me. And then he's like, okay, wait, let me ask. And then he goes and comes back and says, listen, I can't give you the spoon, but somehow I can give you the blanket.
Okay.
Is it okay to give you a blanket? I'm like, of course, thank you, goodbye. So it's this little thing, and you can say, well, that's not fair or whatever, but I'm not, as you said, making him do anything he doesn't want to do. I'm just saying, I need something for free. How can we solve that?
But I think, following on from that, or adding to that, is that creativity thing we were talking about earlier as well. And it's not, let's say, directly analogy, but because you're I guess what you're talking about there is bringing him into your problem, and it's now a we thing, not an I thing. But But
I really, and I encourage the audience to do this often. Whenever you have a problem, whenever you're like dealing with customer service or whatever, there's something you need a solution for. Involve them by using the we. How can we resolve it? What is it that we can do? When they say there's nothing I can do, but what is it that we can do? Make them think differently and advocate for you to solve your problem.
No, absolutely, totally agree. I wasn't disagreeing. I was going to take it on a slightly different angle of the creativity as well. That very often, particularly in business, you're asking someone for a referral. You're asking somebody for an introduction. And people go, I don't know anybody. I just I've got no one I can send to you. And I always find a good rebuttal to that is, I know you don't know anybody, but if you did know somebody, who would it be?
Right.
And then very much like that, making
Helps
the IOE thing,
yeah.
They start thinking, oh, well, actually, I know I don't know anyone, but, if I did, it would be Lousin and Matt and Steve and John. And I guess, people are very tunneled, single direction, blinkered in so many aspects of life that it's just how do you open those eyes? How do you, I guess, combine forces and make them think in a different way?
And also, people naturally want to help, and we can tune into that. Of course, there are the psychopaths and the narcissists, and I need to deal with them all the time. But the majority of people are caring people. The majority of people have empathy. The majority of people want to resolve conflict. The majority of people don't like conflict. So we can use that, and that's why I'm saying you don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to. If you just stay connected to what is my need, what could be their need, and how can we resolve that together, and then you work on how can I remain calm, etc., etc. Like, it's so much easier than people think. Even me with my title professional negotiator, it sounds intimidating for people. And a million times I've had negotiations where people tell me, oh, that was much easier than I thought. They thought having to negotiate with me would be difficult or complicated, or they had to be like at their best or whatever. Whereas I'm like, my goal is to resolve conflict. The faster we can do it, the better. Because I'm not negotiating for the sake of negotiating. I'm negotiating for the sake of coming to an agreement. So if we can do that fast and collaboratively and in a cool way, of course I'm going to choose that.
So during this podcast, you've given lots and lots of, I guess, great strategies, great tactics, and overall negotiating pieces of advice. But I mean, for anyone listening to this now, if there was one immediate thing that they should do to go and learn, to go and implement, whether that's somebody wanting to go and get a raise from their boss, a child wanting to get a higher allowance out of their parents. I mean, what's one immediate thing everybody should go and do right now?
Yeah, well, I would say realize that you're already a negotiator. Because in order for you to be a good negotiator, you need to get off of the thing of, oh, I don't like it, I don't want it, I rarely negotiate, it's maybe once a year for a salary increase. It's not. You're already a negotiator. You're negotiating every single day. So by having that identity shift and that mindset shift, it already takes away a lot of the fears and the things that are blocking people from negotiating. You're already negotiating. So then the question is, how can I negotiate better? If you just want the skills and the tactics, it's super easy. Go on YouTube, ask AI. I have loads of videos on LinkedIn, on YouTube. You can learn from that. But if you really want to go from being good to great, it's work on yourself. And that also is something you've already done. Like everything you've done on personal development, on therapy, on healing, you name it. Anything that has helped you become a better version of yourself is helping you become a better negotiator. Because those are the things that will allow you to know yourself better, understand your triggers, be able to manage your ego and your emotions on a negotiation table, and remain calm when the stakes are high. Remain calm when somebody says no. Remain calm when you get a rejection. Remain calm when somebody pushes you against the wall with an unreasonable demand. It's your capacity to remain calm that will set you apart from others and help you find the agreement in a situation of disagreement.
How can everybody get in touch? How can people work with you? I mean, I know if someone's a big business, they can hire you for training and to work with them on negotiations. What about the guys who are just starting the businesses or interested to learn a new skill? Have you got any courses? Do you do any small events? And how can people reach out to you?
No, unfortunately, I rarely work for the public like that. It's mainly for companies, governments, hospitals, etc. But I do share my knowledge actively on LinkedIn, on YouTube. I share loads of free stuff, so it's all there. I used to have a podcast where I interviewed other professional negotiators, my colleagues, so it's all there, it's all free. And then if you do work for a company or you're a decision maker, you want to bring me in, I give keynotes, trainings, and advisory on negotiations.
Perfect. Well, we'll put everything in the show notes, and we'll make sure everyone knows where to click and where to find you. Lousin, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to go home now, and I'm going to start to bully my daughter and make sure she doesn't get any chocolate, and I get what I want out of this. Thanks a lot for being here.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to No Bollocks with Matt Haycox. Today's conversation was packed with actionable insights, and I'm super, super grateful that you joined us. Now, our community now boasts 160,000 downloads a month of this podcast, and that is a testament to entrepreneurs just like you who refuse to settle for mediocrity. So don't miss out. Subscribe now and gain exclusive access to the conversations that can transform your business and transform your life. Also, while you're at it, if you could visit www.matt-haycox.com or click the link in the show notes below, and please sign up to the No Bollocks newsletter. That's like the sister newsletter that lives with this podcast. Every week I send 2 emails, and in just 10 minutes you're going to gain more knowledge than most people doing a 3-year MBA. So please subscribe, rate, share this episode with someone who needs a No Bollocks boost. And until next time, keep hustling and keep winning.